Well, for those of you who have listened to the Variety program for a while, you know one of our sort of deepest held convictions is the issue of school choice. And one of our good friends here, AFP, has been extremely helpful all around the country working on all of that. And to talk a little bit about some of the things that have been happening lately, Genevieve Collins, the Texas State Director for AFP. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? Happy Wednesday.
Happy. Listen, you've got a lot going on, as it turns out, and I realize that this is sort of an all-encompassing thing, but it feels like you're getting pretty close to getting to where you need to be on a whole range of issues down in the great state of Texas.
That's exactly right. Our session is every 2 years and lasts for 5 months, and we are in the throes of the final countdown, getting ready to, well, we are sprinting to the finish line, but we already have our first massive win under our belt, which was passing the largest school choice program in American history as of May 3rd. So now we're just putting all sorts of cherries on top of our cake.
I mean, it's such a big deal. And for those of you who haven't followed the Texas debate, typically, look, nationally, it's sort of a partisan discussion, and then you've got Republicans largely in favor of school choice and Democrats largely opposed to it because of teachers' unions and all those things. But when you get into red states and you get into rural areas, it doesn't cleanly break down on partisan lines, and it becomes more difficult to get over the finish line. We've seen countless examples that you guys have worked on and ultimately won the argument in states across this country, but probably no bigger state, both physically, maybe population-wise, and in terms of its import than Texas.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, the fight, I would say it feels like a 40-year crusade at this point to pass school choice. And I would say the last 2.5 years have really felt like World War I style level of trench fighting, like trench warfare.
Right.
But the reality is in Texas, it's not R versus D, it's urban versus rural.
Yeah.
And what we've seen over the past 2 years is a massive shift in the Overton window of how many rural Republicans are now open and willing to vote for school choice. Just to frame this in perspective, 4 years ago when I started at Americans for Prosperity here in Texas, we had 29 Texas House of Representative members. Out of 150, 29 voted for school choice policy in 2021. Then in 2023, we had 65 Republicans vote for school choice policy. And now, as of this year, we had 86. So this has been not just a policy issue, but also a political issue, which I'm sure we'll unpack, and really moving more of rural Texas into the fold with suburban and urban education outcomes and how we want to see kids be able to thrive.
Yeah, because there's a couple of ways of looking at this. And look, I think COVID did, for the minds of most people around the country, reopen a debate about school choice and what schools were doing as they handled the pandemic and everything else, where families should have a choice one way or another. But on top of that, when you're talking about this rural versus urban divide, a whole piece of economy comes into this. And you're talking about rural areas where schools are big employers, big drivers of community, where you have, something less than a partisan look at this, so much as it is a representation of communities. And so the arguments that you've been making here for the last several years that have now looked like they've really taken hold have given somebody sort of a sense of community on why this is a good thing for the next generation, for younger people, let alone their families, and trying to make sure that our children are educated.
That's exactly right. The fight here was always, well, this will kill Friday Night Lights. I don't know if anyone knows anything about Texas, but we like football on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now Thursdays, apparently, and Monday. But anyways, that's a different topic for another day. But, it's going to kill our high school football programs. It's going to defund public schools. And these arguments are such false choices and such poor arguments that we're able to actually talk about when we're focused on the student and doing what's best in the best interest of a child, making sure that your child is prepared for the career or military readiness that needs to happen, we're going to have 10,000 we're going to have 10,000 plumbers, a shortage of 10,000 plumbers, excuse me, in the next 10 years. We're going to have HVAC and electrician shortages. We have high quality jobs that in rural America or in urban America, people need to fill. And these are really well-paying jobs that we can set these kids up now for a very bright future. But it has to be about the child and not about the four walls with which a child is within.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like there's nothing sadder than children are basically just left out of a growing economy, don't have the skill set, all because they didn't have a choice of where it was that they would go to school. And too many school systems ultimately aren't providing that platform that gives any sort of hope of success. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but if you look at Texas and you look at the arguments that were levied against something like school choice, it sort of skips past that, right? And the left and teachers unions and everything else have done a really good job of trying to cleave off conservative support by basically making arguments about, like you said, Friday Night Lights, right? Well, there's nothing to preclude Friday Night Lights ensuring that children have a choice of the best education they can achieve.
I always made the case. Now, I went to the University of Tennessee, and so it pains me to say this, but I always made the case. If Tim Tebow can have a law as a homeschooler and be a 5-star recruit for the University of Florida and then go win national championships, this argument is so moot that it's not going to kill Friday Night Lights.
Right. He had to play football somewhere, right?
Exactly. I'm like, this is crazy. But what we really ended up doing was not just change the policy argument, but we had to shift the political conversation in order to have a better policy conversation. And I think that that's really where AFP, really the rubber met the road for us, because we were having real conversations with people at their own doorsteps in communities across the state from all demographics, and making sure that they were heard, but also giving these folks a chance to really talk about what they want for their child. Let them dream about the art of the possible. And then, oh, by the way, these new candidates that do support school choice, we're going to help get them elected so that this dream you just conveyed to us is now going to become a reality for your child. And anyone that's going to get in the way, we will help forcibly early retire.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's the secret to what you all do, which is the power of AFP has always been rooted in the communities that you and your people live in around the country. These aren't strangers that are going to talk to a bunch of Texans. These are your friends and neighbors, and harnessing their voices and ensuring that they have the arguments that they all believe in, being able to take that to people, it opens up a conversation, right? It's not like the one that you have every 2 or 4 years where somebody shows up at your doorstep and says, vote for X. It's a rolling conversation that at some point may become political in the context of an election, as you suggested, but really is a conversation about how these policies can improve people's lives.
Absolutely. I think what our teams do incredibly well, both in Texas and around the country, is that we talk to normal people about, and we in a normal language. We're not using, highbrow political jargon. We actually just talk to people the way that we would normally talk to our own friends and families. Mm-hmm. And we're really consistent. And I think that that's the other component about AFP, is that it's not just a massive door and phone program. We're in our communities, we're doing events, we're showing up, and we support other groups. We constantly are networking and lifting up the voices of our community. If we fundamentally believe as an organization that it's our job to connect people with policy, then it's so much easier to just open up a conversation and have it be a normal, easy conversation, and let someone steer their own beliefs into what they think is best for the future while we can articulate our own.
That's an excellent point. Give us a little flavor, Genevieve. I know because of that rolling conversation, you're just constantly adding to your community. How many people do you have affiliated with AFP across the state of Texas at this point?
So I have one of the largest offices here in the organization. We have 25 full-time staff, 42 part-time staff. Last year, we had 175,000 unique activists join us.
That's a big
in
number.
something. Yeah, and we have 14 offices across the state. Now, I manage two brands, Americans for Prosperity and the Libre Initiative, and our whole point in Texas, or well, let me rephrase, our whole campaign in Texas is to make freedom bigger in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to have Texas be the shining example. I know there's 49 other states, but as a Texan, we don't really care as much as we should. We like Texas the most.
You've made that abundantly clear.
Yeah, I know. Well, at least we're consistent.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
But yeah, no, we have a huge office, and our job is to make sure we talk to people. Last year, we talked to almost 1 million people, both either at their doors, at events, or on the phone. And we just had conversation. Not everything has to be political, even in a political year. Sometimes people just want a chance to vent or breathe and say what's on their mind. And we're a great facilitator for that, while also empowering people's voices.
Well, it sounds like a recipe for success, and the proof is in the pudding on this big win on the education front for you all. And I know you've got an agenda that continues. So thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for giving us a little insight into what's happening in Texas, and come back anytime.
Thank you. Great being with you.